Pyotr Ilya Tchaikovsky is remembered as the brilliant composer behind Swan Lake and The Nutcracker. But behind the curtain, he constantly censored himself. His queerness was not only rejected, it was made invisible. To survive, he divided himself into two roles. One, the celebrated composer, and the man behind the truth a society wouldn't accept. We celebrate his music today, but we often overlook the price he paid to create it. Alan Turing is remembered as a genius who cracked Nazi codes, saved millions of lives during World War II, and laid the groundwork for modern computing. Yet, despite his contributions, the British society rejected his queerness. Turing was criminalized, chemically castrated, and ultimately died by suicide. It took decades for the British government to formally acknowledge this injustice. What these two men shared, besides brilliance, was a difference that didn't fit into accepted categories. A difference made invisible. And even if the history's brightest could be erased, what about everyone else? The quiet student who stays silent because their thoughts don't fit in a classroom rhythm. The friend who always says, "I'm fine," as if performing from a script. Invisible differences are everywhere. The real question is, are we willing to see them? Invisible differences aren't only presented in extraordinary lives, like those of Tchaikovsky and Turing. They also exist quietly around us, shaping everyday experiences. When we think of the word diversity, we usually picture visible categories like race, gender, age, maybe disability. These are all indeed real and important, but they are only part of the picture. Some differences are harder to spot. They don't appear on forms of photographs or marked by accent, clothing, documentation. Yet, they deeply shape people's lives. Think of an introvert in a country praising extroversion, or a sensitive man pressured to be stoic. Imagine a teenager who loves dancing, but hides it because boys shouldn't move that way. Or someone whose queerness is invisible or even easy to express. But still, these traits defines how they experience the world. These differences, however, don't announce themselves. Often, they remain unseen until someone either breaks down, withdraws, or decides to finally speak up. Here's the key point. Differences become visible only when our society allows space for them. Diversity isn't something we simply possess. It is something we either acknowledge or ignore. It's not about checking boxes. It's about relationships. Recognition gives difference room to exist openly. When we discuss invisible differences, we are talking about entire ways of being that society struggles to categorize, and thus overlooks or simply erases. We're shaped not only by who we are, but what the society chooses to recognize or disregard. Why does these invisible differences remain hidden? It starts with the expectations the society quietly sets for each of us. From the moment we're born, society hands us with a script. No one explicitly tells us what we're acting, but we quietly learn which parts of ourselves get applause and which being silence or correction. Think about childhood. Imagine a child who loves painting and music, but hears repeatedly that these interests are only nice hobbies, not a real promising future. Gradually, the child learns to hide his passions and pursue what others deem practical or valuable instead. We internalize these cues over time as men. This philosopher Judith Butler described this as repetition, repeating behaviors that the society approves until we forget we're performing at all. These roles start to feel very natural, shaping our identities. Another sociologist, Irving Goffman, called this life a stage, where we carefully manage our interactions to match others' expectations. This isn't dishonesty, however. It is basically surviving. We adapt to avoid others' rejection. We quietly hide parts of ourselves that does not fit. Yet, here's the catch. Invisible differences aren't personal failures. They reflect what society decides is acceptable and valuable. Diversity isn't about filling identity checkboxes again. It's about genuinely recognizing each other's humanity. What happens when we finally tire of performing? What does it cost us when we hide just to be accepted? And most importantly, what becomes of those parts we've kept hidden backstage? Authentic diversity isn't merely about visible categories. It thrives when everyone feels safe to express their full authentic selves. When we overlook this, we discard potential ideas. We discard creativity. We discard meaningful corrections that enrich our lives. Recognizing invisible differences isn't simply kindness. It is so crucial for personal dignity and community strengths. Yet, hiding who we really are does not come without consequences. Over time, it creates a deep emotional toll. Constantly performing roles to meet social expectations carries a real emotional cost. Over time, the quiet effort drains us, often unnoticed until it becomes too overwhelming. Imagine a workplace where certain personalities always dominate, determining whose voice matters. Quiet individuals don't necessarily lack ideas. They just learned their contributions aren't valued. Slowly, their silence shifts from discomfort into resignation. Feeling persistently unseen, they start doubting their worth. They start to lose their confidence and withdrawing even more from the society. What begins as subtle adaptation grows into emotional isolation. This hidden struggle isn't just uncomfortable. It can deeply shape someone's sense of the self. Frantz Fanon, a thinker of identity, argued that our self-worth largely depends on being genuinely seen by others. When the society constantly overlooks certain differences, it sends a painful message. Who you truly are isn't worthy of recognition. This constant rejection doesn't just suppress individuality, it erodes self-esteem and mental health, turning invisibility into lasting emotional wound. By failing to recognize these quieter differences, we also weaken our communities. Authentic diversity isn't merely about visible categories. It thrives when everyone feels safe to express their full, authentic selves. When we overlook this, we lose potential ideas, creativity, meaningful connections that can utterly enrich our lives. Therefore, recognizing invisible differences isn't simply kindness. It's crucial for personal dignity and community strength. Yes, we know that recognizing invisible difference is indeed crucial. But how do we start? The answer begins with empathy. We often assume empathy means fully understanding someone's perspective, believing that we must completely grasp their experience to truly care. But empathy can exist even without fully understanding. To feel empathy is to give someone room to be exactly who they are, especially when their experiences differ greatly from ours. It asks us to accept complexity without forcing further simplification. Consider confronting a grieving friend. Even if we felt lost ourselves, we cannot ever fully understand their unique pain. Genuine empathy doesn't demand perfect understanding. It simply offers patience, presence, allowing grief to exist openly without needing further explanation or quick solutions. I have seen empathy in classrooms where teachers adjust their approaches, not because they completely understand each student's backgrounds, but because they trust that diverse experiences deserve respect. I've also seen it among friends who don't insist on explanations when words fail. They just simply offer quiet, patient companionship instead. Therefore, empathy at its core is unconditional acceptance. It respects differences, even if we never fully comprehend them. When empathy is present, people feel safe revealing their hidden parts of themselves without fear or judgment or rejection. Interactions transform from careful performances into genuine connections between people. By expanding our understanding of empathy, we challenge the invisibility that many people experience. It creates spaces where differences can be openly expressed, allowing communities to flourish through authentic diversity. We have explored how invisible differences and functions and our performance can hide important parts of ourselves. It can definitely feel easier to stay in these roles because stepping outside expectations is definitely uncertain. But when we finally choose visibility, and when the society as a whole supports this choice, something powerful happens. Real changes start small. It begins when we genuinely listen to quieter voices. It happens each time we value perspectives that are different from ours, even when they initially confuses or challenges us. These small choices create the differences to exist openly. They created the opportunities without needing justification or explanation. This is a version we can strive for, a world where differences don't stay hidden. Visibility isn't conditional, and respect is freely given rather than earned through conformity. Achieving this won't require grand gestures, just daily commitments to truly see each other as we genuinely are. Choosing visibility means choosing connections, dignity, and openness. It's a choice we can make now, and one that will build our communities where everyone feels seen, accepted, and free to simply be themselves. I hope that you can leave this speech with more understanding, empathy, and courage in the future. Thank you.